So yesterday when we finished up working, we just taken the carburetor bowl off and we got this and our main jet soaking. We checked the carb, made sure that the float mechanism, float needle is working, so it's not letting gas in, letting gas in, not letting gas in. So the thing I want to focus on today is the main jet. Now when I started cleaning it yesterday, I noticed it was really cruddy. So not only was there a lot of like brass coppery corrosion on the, I think this is an emulsion tube, let's call it that, emulsion tube. I also couldn't really see down through the jet very well. I'm going to try to blow through it because it seems like the tension, like surface tension of the carb cleaner alone is keeping the hole blocked, and unless I blow through it, I can't see through it. So it also feels really restrictive when I'm blowing. Now I know the hole's not supposed to be really big or anything, but as I look down through it, and I'll try to show you guys now, you can see there's a lot of crud at the bottom of the jet. So let's see if we can get you guys a good look at that. Okay, so you can see through, see if I can get this to focus right there. But you can kind of see the hole doesn't look really regular. You see if I twisted it kind of, if I can twist it straight. So you can see through, but it's not optimal. So what I'm going to do, and without damaging the inside of this jet, what I want to do is find the smallest one of my small mini drill bits that'll go through, and I'll try to get this down through, clean up the hole a bit, and I'll keep doing that until I start to get a lot of resistance, and then I'll stop. That way I'll know I'm at least cleaning gunk and dirt off the inside of the main jet. So I'm going to go ahead and pull a couple of these out and see if I can't figure out what size it is. So I went ahead and removed the main jet out of the emulsion tube, and then I just did a bit of poking around on Google, and it's saying that for Kaihin or Kaihin, however you want to pronounce their name, the jet size is actually the size in fraction of a millimeter. So a 98 jet is a 0.98 millimeter. So what I'm going to do is I've got a 0.95 millimeter bit there. I'm going to go down through this with that first and clean it out, and then I'm probably going to stop there. We'll see how it goes. So I just lightly put the bit down into the backside of the jet, and I actually rotated it like backwards, and I can feel it digging out the gunk and the goop there. So I'm just going to keep going backwards through it for the time being. I'll do that from both ends, and then as you can see now, when I pull it up, let me see if I can get that to focus again. There's piles of just like corrosion and junk there, and you can see already it's starting to open up significantly. So now when you look at it, you can see all those rough edges and gunk and shit. Yeah, this thing was pretty plugged, and that's why it wasn't running last going off. So I'm going to go ahead and finish cleaning this up, and then we'll get that back in the emulsion tube, and we'll put the carb back together, and then we'll look at hooking up our temporary gas tank tower on the test jig. If I had thought about this, I would have did this before. We could have seen a flow before and after test, but you can see now lots coming through there. Go through both ways just to make sure we're pushing anything and everything out. I believe we are good to go. Now you can see if I bring up the jet, get it to focus on the jet. Come on, camera. Now you can see it's a lot easier to see through it. So yeah, that was pretty plugged. So let's go ahead and get our carburetor back together. So I went ahead and got my jet back into my emulsion tube. Get it to focus. You can see right through that now, no issues. Things are looking very regular inside, roundness wise. And if I blow through it, it's nowhere near as obstructed as it was. It's actually really, really good. So, carburetor reassembly. So one thing I noticed is that some of the gaskets and whatnot on this are, you know, it's 38 years old. So they're getting up there. I think what I might do is I'll get the bike running as is for now, and then when final assembly rolls around sometime in a couple months time, what I'll do is I'll go ahead and I'll order a rebuild kit, and I'll end up replacing all like the gaskets and stuff like that. In the meantime, let's get that slide oiled up. Just a tiny little slick is all we need on that. Just enough to give it a little quick coat. So now that I've got the carburetor back together, it's nice, throttle assembly sliding nice. I think what I'd like to do next is I'd like to get my tower set up for my gas tank on the test jig, and then we're going to have a look at the exhaust and see if we can't mount the exhaust up temporarily with just that one post on it, or if we might want to wait until we can get the second post. That way we can get a good seal. I'll even have a couple copper gaskets so it seals properly, so when it runs properly. So let's have a look. So I just went ahead and screwed a couple pieces of wood on as a mast to put the gas tank on. A few screws here, a few screws here, so it's good and sturdy, you know, enough to put a gas tank on anyways. So now what I've got done is, for this lawnmower gas tank, there's a mounting hole right here. This is how it was bolted to the lawnmower, and there was a piece bolted on here. But I found this larger bolt that'll allow me to come through here, also get through the 2x2 that's on the end of the mast, and then washers and bolt it on. The thing is, this hole is not big enough, so I'm just going to drill that out quickly, and then we'll be able to slide this through easily. It's just thin white metal, so it's no big deal to get through it. So now if we run our bolt through, to go all the way through, it still brings up in the piece that sets into the steel from what it was originally meant for, but once that goes through, I can bolt it onto our mast and we should be perfectly fine. So that's two holes. We got the option to mount it either which way. So let's get that back on the thing and have a look at it with the tank on it. So there we go. There's our little tank mounted to our mast. It's, you know, 6 to 8 inches above the level where the bring you guys down, where the carb is going to be, right there. So that should be good. So what I need to do now is I need to get a petcock or something to install in that tank so I can get gas out of it and have a shut off on it so I can work with it sensibly. So I went ahead and put the carburetor back on. I'm pretty sure that's ready to go now for a test run. The other thing I did was I went ahead and I picked out the old copper gasket. It's pretty toast. So I've got a couple of these on order now, as well as a couple new studs, so I can replace the stud that belongs up here. Once I get those studs, the copper gasket, I can then properly mount the muffler up, so the muffler's going to come off this and go back this way. Then I can also put something else, or if I'll use a piece of steel or something, that I can put like a metal strap onto to hold the muffler in place. And then I'll be content to then get it going and know that it'll run as expected anyways. So at this point, we've only got a couple things left to do before we can kick this motor over for the first time. First thing I want to do is I want to check my clearances on my intake and my exhaust valves. Once I check and see that those are good, I'm going to go ahead and get the stud put in to the hole I tapped out. I picked those up today. I've also got the new copper gasket for the exhaust. Then we'll mount up the exhaust, the full thing, and at that point we'll be ready to kick it over. So let's move forward. So just a quick confirmation in our Bible here. This is the Bible for this project. Intake valve clearance. All models 2 thou. Exhaust for what we're dealing with, XL125 motor, 2 thou. So we're going to go ahead and check both sides, make sure 2 thou, and then we'll move forward from there. Also, one quick thing to note, I did a compression test on this. It was 135. That's really low for this. A 185 should be 192 plus or minus 21 psi. So we should be minimum 171. But I figure since this thing sat for so long, didn't run, probably has corroded a bit, valves need to be cleaned off and whatnot. Once we run this for a little bit, the valves should lap themselves a bit, and we'll get back up to where we should be for compression. And if not, then we can look at doing things like lapping the valves, new top end gaskets, new rings and seals, stuff like that. Either way, let's check our intake and exhaust valve clearances, and then move toward getting the muffler mounted to the motor. So in checking the clearance here, I can see that the 2 thou feeler goes in really easily. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and get my wrench on. I really should have waited to put the carb on. Give this a little loosen. There we go. I'm going to slide my feeler gauge back in. Now I'm going to adjust this downward a bit until I get to the point where it's giving me some resistance. So you can see right now my feeler gauge is kind of stuck. So I'll back it off just a tiny bit. And there we go. A little tiny touch more. Okay. So now what I'll do while that's in there is I'll go ahead and hold the adjuster in place, and I'll go ahead and tighten up my nut. Now with this adjusted, we should still have a bit of slippy slide, but it should just catch. So there we go, that's our 2 thou there. So I'm going to go ahead and do the same for the exhaust side now, and get that adjusted, and then we'll move toward getting the new studs in the head so we can put the exhaust on. Now that we've got those adjusted, I'm going to go ahead and put our missing stud in, get one of our copper gaskets, and we'll get our pipe down from up over top in the garage attic, and we'll get it mounted up. So one thing I like to do when putting like studs and heads and stuff like that is I just a little, you know, call it a trick or something. It's pretty straightforward. So what you do is you just put 2 nuts on your stud. You can go ahead, put a wrench on your bottom one, put your socket on your top one, you just go ahead and tighten them against one another, like so. And that way now when you go to turn this in, I can just put my socket on this and turn it in tight. And there we go, now we've got our new stud. So next thing we want to do now is we'll get our flanges and stuff out of our box and go get our exhaust and have a look at getting this mounted up. Looks like the flange is a bit bent. It's probably from someone over tightening it previously because the copper gasket that was in there before was completely mush and one of the studs was gone. So I'll end up straightening this out, you know, before I take the wire wheel to it and clean it up and get it with some heat treated or heat resistant paint and whatnot. But for the time being, I should just be able to snug this up enough to get everything else on to get it fired up. Loosen this off and adjust it a bit more so we can get the angle of this right. So at this point I'm realizing that I'm missing a small ring of packing that usually goes around this front part of the, or the piece of the front of the exhaust pipe. This thing right here. And it fits between, so it goes in here kind of thing and forms the seal. And then this clamp then goes over this piece on the muffler and then clamps that to that packing to seal it up. So after a bunch of dicking around with the leaky carburetor and trying to find a way to get this mounted up so it wasn't too horrible, I managed to get the following to happen. So I'm just going to give her another little kick. There's a bit of gas left in the bowl, so, and I got to keep giving it a bit of throttle, so obviously the carburetor needs to be adjusted, but it ran, and I'm hoping it'll run again right now. So here we go. Try it once more. Oh, we slipped off the muffler. Let me slip that back in. Starting to get a bit warm here. Oh, baby. The motor's actually dancing around. We can probably get this rug just in under the front here. See if I can keep it from slipping a bit. I'll stand on this and we'll give it another little kick. Oh yeah, she's getting warm. Internal combustion. Let's see. Okay, I'll call that a success. So at this point I've got my little vice grip muffler mount deal thing taken apart. At this point I'm happy to call this motor running. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to go ahead and order my muffler packing so that I can make this more permanent with the proper supports coming off the jig, rig, whatever you want to call it, to support the muffler. So that being said, I think we're going to call this one running, make it into a video, and then pick it up on the next one, either when we get our packing and we start working on making this permanent, or maybe while we're waiting for that stuff to come in, we'll start looking at the frame because it's ready for paint. Either way, thanks for watching.